There's a wonderful book by the late Monty Python, Terry Jones, called Who Murdered Chaucer, about well, we might say the 60s analogy of the late 14th century, which again was ruthlessly clamped down on by Henry IV. So there are periods, and you look at Andalusian Spain, you can look at the liberal empires of Central Asia before the Mongols. There are periods in history across cultures where one has a liberal egalitarian flowering that becomes ruthlessly exterminated and forgotten. And I think that is the danger we face today. This is not a spectator sport. And so that, the miracle will be is if our grandchildren or great-grandchildren have any memory at all of the sort of rights we currently enjoy and take for granted. The more common, more frequent model is of no rights for the mass of the population, and that people who seek equality and rights are an anathema to power and need to be controlled and exterminated if they object. And that, I think, is the very real risk we face today. Nowadays, what is to be gained by saying it's fascism? Well, it's a way of saying it's really evil and horrible. Well, better is to say, perhaps, there are these real threats to my and our life, liberty, and security. And that's what the problem is, not whether or not it has some label from the past. This is really a totalitarian corporate model, but supported with an avowedly racist patriarchal ideology. So in some senses, it's really quite new. Fascism, socialism, and communism, social democracy had one thing in common, which is that to some degree they believed in the welfare state. In a social democracy, liberal democracy believed in the welfare state for everybody. The communists believed in it, let us say, for the workers and not for the middle classes. And the racists believed in it for those who are racially pure. But current right-wing ideology has no truck with any welfare state and no social protection. It is an absolute Darwinism in which the richest dominate everything and the poorest get nothing. And that is the model that ideology has sold in America. And as Lyndon Johnson said, I bowdlerize his remark, but if you convince a white man that he's superior to a black man, he'll let you pick his pocket forever. Fascism was to a degree a direct competition with communism, and some would argue was a reaction to terror in Russia, which is something that on the left people tend not to want to acknowledge, that sort of middle road right and centre-right or far-right opinion saw, rightly or wrongly, a need to combat totalitarian communism. And that doesn't exist today at all. If you're looking for what are the solutions to fascism, what are the solutions to these ideology, you don't have to look any further than the policies of the mid-1940s. Certainly in the West, we had unparalleled economic development. We had a welfare state and a mixed economy through until the 1980s. And that kind of policy writ large for the world is pretty much what one needs now. You don't need to look further than those policies. And mass unemployment was seen as a cause of totalitarianism, and that full employment and human security weren't charitable acts, but acts of realist social cohesion. And as I and others have written, if we're now in a further round of global economic depression, then these are the policies that we need. We don't have to reinvent them. They're there, and structures such as the UN need huge amounts of support rather than denigrating, defunding, and pulling down.